Beef prices are super high. Yeah, More Perfect Union did a video on it. Here, look.
Back in the day, 1 square mile would have as many as 4 different farm families on it. Now, all of a sudden, you have to go 4, 5, or 6 miles to find a farmer. When the farmer leaves the community, or he has no longer a purpose within that community, he not only goes himself, but he also takes the future and the potential future when he moves his family. Come on, baby.
This is Ron Martinson. He lives in Elliott, Iowa, and raises pigs from farrow to finish, or from birth to slaughter. For generations, this is what hog farming looked like in the state of Iowa. But in the last 40 years, Iowa lost 90% of its family farms. That's 40,000 farms that used to look a lot like Ron's. In those same 40 years, the number of hogs that have been raised, slaughtered, and sold has exploded, and the profits made in the hog industry in the state of Iowa has increased by 300%. You don't see that growth in the communities anymore. So where did that money go?
It used to be you drive rural Iowa and you see animals on the land. Now you don't see them, but you smell them.
Hog farms today look a lot more like this. These large metal sheds, called Concentrated Animal Feeding Operations, or CAFOs, have taken their place. And all the profit that sustained farmers' lives went to just 3 companies that now dominate every aspect of the pork industry: Smithfield, JBS, and Tyson. We're going to talk about Tyson because their way of doing business set the standard not only in hog country, but in the entire meat industry. They control 20% of all the pork, beef, and chicken that you buy at the grocery store or get at fast food restaurants, including a lot of brands you might not even know they own. Tyson uses that monopoly power to charge you more and pay farmers less. It's profits off the back of farmers. It's pitted neighbor against neighbor. And Tyson has destroyed not just the economy of Iowa, but the ecology as well.
They're chasing them almighty dollar, but the people who have to live with their creations have to live next to their CAFOs on a daily basis.
Ron's style of farming is the same as his father's. And
This is the billionth video I've seen subtly explaining why capitalism is bad. Can Americans get a clue yet? No. No. As long as there isn't an actual anti-capitalist party that is one of the 2 major parties, Americans will never come to terms with that. They will feel it in their hearts. They will feel it in their bones. And they might even, at times, say they have sympathies towards an alternative, a socialist one, right? But you need party discipline. You need messaging discipline. You need to overcome a century of anti-socialist, anti-communist propaganda. These people realize how fucked up the system is because they live it and they experience it. But they can never come to terms with how the system is designed. As long as they still have their treats at a relatively affordable pace, at a relatively affordable price, they are not going to come to terms with the fact that this is the system that they exist under that is harming them.
previous generations of farmers before.
We live around here with the idea that we want a pig to be a pig.
On Ron's farm, the lifestyle of a hog goes like this. Sows will gestate for about 4 months.
And that is 3 months, 3 weeks, and 3 days.
Then piglets are born in these small wooden pens. Piglets are weaned from their mothers and spend another few weeks in the field before they're transferred to hoop barns like these.
And they will be there until they're about 180 days of age. And at that time, they will weigh about 295 pounds, and that's when they're harvested.
When CAFO started arriving in the neighboring towns and counties, Ron and his father made the decision not to convert to the industrial model.
First off, it was a significant capital investment, but we also felt that the consequences from that decision were too restricting or too confining, not only in terms of our own financial commitment and our own financial security, but also the overall welfare of the animals.
But he watched neighboring farms shut down and farmers leave the area. Meanwhile, in Hardin County, where Nick Shute lives, the kind of operations that replaced farms like Ron's dot the landscape.
Kept waiting for these facilities to fail, but instead of failing, our way of life failed. There's not a whole lot of us left, us independent hog farmers.
Nick's a farmer too, but his operation has gotten smaller and smaller over the years. His bank tells him he's more like a hobby farmer. Now his neighbors are all industrial farms. Each CAFO houses between 2,500 and 25,000 hogs. 95% of hogs in America are raised in these facilities. But this method of farming is pretty new. It came to Iowa in the 1990s and it grew quickly. This method of meat production is sometimes called chickenization, and there's a reason. It was first pioneered by Tyson Foods in the thousands of chickens.
In every part of our lives, our conditions are deteriorating. And it always is a direct consequence of moneyed interest. If someone can actually make larger profit margins, they will inevitably cause the population to come to terms with it, okay? The same goes for the corrosive influence of gambling in American modern day existence. The same goes for, Saudi Arabia normalizing or sports washing itself. There is nothing we can do to stop this kind of normalization. As long as they have enough money, they can dump boatloads of money, bribe people, get positive placement in the media, and bribe politicians, and ensure that they end up destroying all of these other small businesses in the region. And in the aftermath of that, you have all of this economic turmoil, people who lose their jobs, people who lose their family farms, and they get angry and they have a lot of discontent. And if neither party is actually addressing the real harm that they're experiencing, the party that seizes on that anger and changes the attention, shifts the attention back to other red herrings and other marginalized, vulnerable populations that don't have the same defense systems because they don't have money, then you have an increasingly angry and increasingly reactionary electorate that keeps voting for the Republicans over and over and over again.
As they controlled in the South. Don Tyson grew up working with his father, John Tyson, who had a lucrative chicken business that trucked livestock from farms to slaughterhouses in the city. When Don got older, he wanted to expand the operation.
Don Tyson is a remarkable person. Tyson Foods was a relatively large company, but Don turned it literally into a global empire during the course of his life.
The Tyson model was to own every part of the chicken supply chain. They ran feed mills.
Wow, how revolutionary. Oh, you mean vertical integration? Wow, that's never been done before. That's crazy. It's just, this is how you design a monopoly. That's it. That's literally how this works, okay? Brand new idea. There was a time when, the American government had a lot of flaws and a lot of failures, but at least they would tackle this shit, okay? There are very famous examples of this. Low-key what Lena Khan was trying to do at the FTC, ironically enough. But this is classic. This is like Econ 101 shit. This is literally what you learn in some of your first classes, or at least you're supposed to. What the government is supposed to do is trust bust in this circumstance. They're supposed to ensure that a company, one singular company, doesn't own everything from point A to point Z. Because when they do own the entire thing, they end up dominating the market.
Hatcheries, trucking companies, and when that wasn't enough, they opened their own slaughterhouses. The only thing they didn't own was the farm where chickens were raised and fattened. That they left to the farmer. Instead, they'd sell them the buildings and equipment and then sign a contract to sell the chickens back to Tyson. The farmer is the one who takes out a mortgage for the land, who buys and builds the barns, and who cares for the animals during their short life. This is actually the part of the process where the most can go wrong. Animals packed so tightly together can get sick. Buildings corrode, extreme weather can damage your land or animals. With so many variables, it's the farmer that takes on the most risk. For nearly a century, this vertically integrated system defined the chicken industry. But in the 1990s, hogs were chickenized.
The key to chicken production is concentrating all those animals into one spot. And hogs had never been raised that way before. And so Tyson had to build these hog barns that looked like chicken barns. And
by the way, half of the footage that they're showing here is now illegal to film. Because in the United States of America, despite the fact that we have a First Amendment, that First Amendment is not so free when it comes to ag-gag laws that pertain to incredibly harmful agricultural practices being filmed. For those of you who don't know, it is literally, if you go to a chicken farm of this sort, or if you go to a hog farm of this sort and you try to film it, it's literally illegal.
Figure out how to pack these very large 300-pound mammals into one space and raise them in the same way they raise chickens. And one thing I really need to emphasize, they did this because there was billions of dollars on the table.
Before, hogs were known as mortgage lifters. Farmers would raise other crops and animals, but hogs were always a moneymaker because pork sold for more at the grocery store. In 1992, 97% of farmers were independent. Now 70% of all hogs are sold under contract to buyers like Tyson. By that time, Don Tyson was a billionaire, and he spent most of his time deep-sea fishing or palling around with politicians.
The core DNA of Tyson's business model is that it can go out to massive industrial-scale customers, Walmart, like the grocery chains, and it can promise them consistent high-volume products.
The Colonel's rotisserie gold.
But to do
Ag-gag laws, agricultural gag, are the anti-whistleblower laws that apply to animal agricultural industry, popularized by Mark Bittman in April 2011 in the New York Times column, but used long before then by advocates. The term ag-gag typically refers to state laws in the United States of America that forbid undercover filming or photography of activity on farms with the consent of their owner, particularly targeting whistleblowers of suspected animal rights abuses at these facilities. Although these laws have originated in the United States, they've also begun to appear elsewhere, such as in Australia and Canada. Another wonderful way that we export our brain rot and export our corruption to other countries. Supporters of ag-gag laws have argued that they serve to protect the agriculture industry from the negative repercussions of exposés by whistleblowers. The proliferation of ag-gag laws have been criticized by various groups, arguing that the laws are intended primarily to censor animal rights abuses by the agriculture industry from the public, to create a chilling effect in reporting of these violations and violate the right of freedom of speech. A number of U.S. ag-gag laws have been overturned as violations of the First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. Pigs and Israel.
that, Tyson needs to control every element of what's happening on the farm.
Farmers invest a lot in these buildings. To start a CAFO, farmers will take out hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt for land and for structures built to Tyson's specification.
And if they don't comply, they're shit out of luck. No pun intended.
With all that debt, and with structures meant for hogs, it makes it difficult for them to leave the business or to convert to a different type of operation.
It really was a true corporate takeover. Tyson created a closed, contract-controlled system, and it destroyed the open and competitive system.
Ron is able to survive because he contracts with a specialty market called Nyman Ranch, a subsidiary of Purdue that he sells hogs to at a premium, as much as 44% above what conventional producers can get. Any hog that Ron doesn't sell to Nyman, he takes to the local auction in Red Oak. The auction used to be a bustling hub for the community farmers. Now, less than 2% of hogs are sold on the open market.
There isn't another thing like this for a great distance around me. Even within the last 15, 20 years, they have gone from hog buying stations in every county to few and far between, and a lot of folks have been forced to just head them to a weekly sale barn.
You know, there's just not as many auctions around because it's a kind of a dying breed anymore. The big boys, like your confinement and your hog deals, you know, they're all more direct. They're just a lot less competition than what we used to be.
As more farmers...
Anyway, so that's a good way to understand the problem.